So, like the title says, behind me, we're going to be working on my 1964 C10, getting it kind of ready for a show coming up down in Evansville, Indiana. It's called the Evil Shindig, but first I need to get the tail shaft seal out of my Turbo 350, and also the water pump has decided to start leaking. We got to get these things changed out, so hopefully you guys ride along, and if you don't know, maybe I can learn you something new. I don't know why I said that like I'm a hillbilly. Gotta give it the shake test. As many of you know, the tail shaft is at the back side of your transmission, and there's a little seal in there. On these Turbo 350s, that's one of the prone leak spots, so mine is leaking in there. It's kind of spraying all over everything, exhaust and everything, making just a heck of a mess. So first line of business we gotta do for this truck, being a long bed, is there's a carrier bearing in here, which I'll get you in here in just a second to show you, but there's a carrier bearing right here, and this is a two-piece drive shaft. So, and taking the carrier bearing out, we'll be able to then come back here to the pinion, which is right here, and we'll be able to take that out, and then we will remove this entire drive shaft, exposing our tail shaft seal down in here, and then we can start disassembling that and replacing it with our new one. Alright, so like I was saying, first step is going to be removing this carrier bearing, which, like I was saying, this is a two-piece drive shaft. Being that it's a long bed, had to kind of stay with the two-piece just due to the overall length of everything. There's two, I think 3/8 bolts here. Got to pop them out, and then we'll move back to our pinion. Carrier bearing still feels pretty tight, so that's a good thing. But I don't know if you can see it. I don't know where I'm at in the relation of the camera, but this hole underneath of this truck right now is kind of coated in transmission fluid, the exhaust, everything. So we were getting a bunch of smoke, and I'm glad to see that that's what it was, because I didn't know. I just seen a bunch of oil, and it's definitely all transmission fluid, so it's kind of a sign of relief there. I'm glad it's not engine oil, because that would have been a pretty big bummer. So let's get up top here and we'll start working on this pinion angle. We'll just get the pinion taken out, not really the angle. Alright, so now onto the pinion angle. I keep saying pinion angle. Onto the pinion of the rear end here, and all it is two U-bolts on either side of this U-joint here, and then we'll be able to pop this off. That's the wrong size. I like to go ahead and put the nuts back on everything that I work on. That way, at least I got a little bit bigger piece to hunt for later on. Alright, gonna go ahead and try to wiggle this free here. It might require a little bit of prying from the pry bar or the closest wrench. There we go. It's always a good idea when you're messing with these U-joints I like to tape them up, but I don't have any tape under here, so we're probably not going to do that right now. Alright, so I went ahead and slid us a drain pan under here just in case we get a little fluid coming out of this thing, but you can see here the transmission fluid has really baked onto this H-pipe and the hose surrounding of the exhaust, so that's definitely where a lot of our smoke and all that good stuff was coming from. So the next step, like I was saying, we're going to be pulling this drive shaft. If I can wiggle underneath here, we're going to be pulling this drive shaft here out of the tail shaft. Apparently Layla's having some kind of fit. She's been really mouthy today. You just want to wiggle it a little bit there, and it should start coming. There we go. Alright, I'm just going to kind of let this thing rest back here. But this seal in question is right here. And it looks like we might also have a little bit of a leak coming out of where our speedo goes in, so I may investigate that while we're under here. But I'm going to go ahead and get something and start prying and peeling this out. Then we can get our new one in there. Hell's Bill, I might have to YouTube how to do this myself. Woo! Finally got her. Tore it up a little bit, but I'm going to get the little bit of this cleaned up in here, and then we'll start going back with our new one. Alrighty, going to clean up this, like I said, just a little bit here. We got our new seal here. Start tapping it around. Just gonna work my way around with this hammer, and then that should be in. You can kind of hear the way the sound changes when you're hitting this thing in. When you know you're in far enough, it kind of gets solid instead of hollowy sound like it's had before. Quick feel all the way around, and it feels pretty good, so start throwing the drive shaft back in this thing. And the shaft does currently have a little bit of transmission fluid on it, which I would recommend if you're putting a brand new shaft in to do that. Just make sure you coat it really good. That way you don't want to rip or roll that new gasket or seal you just put in there, so just make sure you got a little bit on there if you're putting a brand new shaft in or something. And you just want to line those splines up and just start slowly feeding it back in. Alrighty, that's got my carrier bearing lined up. Everything's looking good. So I'm just going to repeat the process going backwards, and this will be done. So I think we might have actually lucked out on the water pump, and I'll show you just a minute what I'm talking about, because the water pump wasn't really weeping out of like a weep hole or anything like that. It's actually a gasket that goes around the back side of this water pump. It's kind of a aluminum water pump. It's kind of a dress up or whatever, I don't know. I ordered a eBay kit, but everything seems to be pretty nice. It works really good, so I'll get you in here and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So back in here you can kind of see there's a gasket. Hopefully, let me get my hand out of the way. You can see there's kind of like a cork gasket in between here, but basically the back side of this water pump, all the way around it, there's bolts, and they're little bitty Allen heads, and I was able to get in here on the back side of this and go through here and check every one of these bolts, and every one of these bolts had backed out a little bit. I don't know if it's just the heat cycles with this being aluminum, and the bolts are probably just a mild steel of some sort, so maybe they just kind of didn't agree. But right in here is where I seen it push out one time whenever I was revving right here. I watched it and it kind of pushed out around this gasket right here. But I checked the coolant in the truck and it is completely full still, so even the little bit that was leaking out of this truck wasn't enough to really worry about, I don't think. So I'm gonna probably take this truck on a drive tomorrow. May even take it to work, just because, I mean, the weather's great out here in southern Indiana, and I mean, that's why we build these things, right, to drive them. So I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to get this thing out, just kind of check everything over, because there's a lot of stuff to take off this thing, and I don't really want to have to do that unless I absolutely have to, which I'm hoping I do not now. So I'll keep you posted on that. But I did end up coming in on the Speedo and replacing a O-ring. There's a little O-ring that goes on your speedometer cable where it goes inside of your transmission. So I just pulled this one, replaced it. It didn't look bad, and it's pretty pliable still, but I figured what the heck, I was there, so I went ahead and replaced it. So I'm gonna get this truck out on a drive tomorrow. I'll check in with you guys, and hopefully we will not have to change that thing. Off to work we go. Alright, so that's going to wrap this one up. Hopefully it helped you guys out. The truck is doing much better now. We don't have all the leaks and all that good stuff like we did before, so I'm considering that a win. But thanks for sticking in here. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.